The event that my group's going to be discussing today is going to be a volcanic eruption taking place at Yellowstone National Park. So this park takes or exists in Wyoming, United States. It extends into parts of Montana and Idaho. It lies atop a volcanic hotspot, meaning that there's an area where heat from the Earth's mantle rises towards the surface of the Earth, and that is where Yellowstone actually takes place. This hotspot has produced caldera, which are a place where volcanic super eruptions can take place. Furthermore, Yellowstone is located on top of the North American plate, which is moving over the hotspot and is a primary driver of Yellowstone's volcanism and seismic activity. Um, this event taking place, a volcanic eruption, would be a geophysical hazard in which the volcanic eruption index can range from anywhere from 0 to 8, 0 being a smaller, lesser lava flow, and 8 being a super eruption. The last volcanic activity of any sort was an eruption 70,000 years ago, roughly, and the last super eruption took place around 640,000 years ago. As for the geographical risk factors that would be associated with this event taking place, ashfall and pyroclastic flows would impact surrounding cities in the general vicinity. Obviously, tourists that are in the park at the time would be caught up in the way of the disaster, and winds would carry ash across the United States eastward, kind of similar to what we saw from the Mount St. Helens eruption, how winds blew ash clouds across the Midwest United States. Furthermore, the mountainous landscape of the national park would likely make lahars destroy a lot of the environment and surrounding things in the vicinity. And ways that we can see this kind of event unfolding ahead of time is if we notice increased geyser activity or frequent seismic activity, because those things are indicators of increased movement of magma underground that could later lead to a volcanic eruption.
Social risk factors of a volcanic eruption at Yellowstone National Park. Who are the primary individuals who will be affected by this event? The primary individuals that would be affected would be the residents of surrounding towns and communities, as well as tourists visiting the park and the downstream communities that can be impacted by ashfall. And according to Data USA and Deloitte, there are approximately 166,000 people living in Yellowstone County alone. Now, does the community have quality education and preparedness and access to emergency services and resources during an emergency like this? Public education and preparedness efforts exist from the local government as well as the National Park Service, but they're not very clear or comprehensive on what exactly everyone should do, especially tourists in this area. They would not be fully prepared. Emergency services are also limited as the remote and rural areas lack access to the services. And the local and state authorities do have emergency plans, but the scale of a super eruption would definitely overwhelm their response plan. Now, the socioeconomic effects and the disruption that this would cause is Yellowstone has a significant impact on agriculture and transportation and tourism and the economy. So, according to a report from the Montana State University, Yellowstone County has 95% of its land classified as farmland. And as you can see from this chart right here, they have a large amount of agriculture and crops and cattle.
Hi, I'm Jordan, and I'll be talking about the immediate short-term and long-term impacts of the Yellowstone supervolcano eruption. So with short-term impacts, we're going to see lava flow, but this is going to be contained to about a 40-mile radius. We're going to see pyroclastic flows in the Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming region, and there's also an estimated human loss of about 90,000 lives. The most damage we're going to see from this kind of eruption is going to come from falling ash with an estimated 1,000-mile radius. Areas closest to the eruption could be covered by up to 3 feet of ash, which is deadly to people, animals, plants, and has the potential to collapse buildings. Ash would destroy farms and crops, disrupt roadways, cause respiratory problems, and shut down air travel in parts of North America. And this ash also has the potential to cool Earth's temperature, as we saw in the Pinatubo eruption of 1991. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into long-term impacts. So here's a map that shows a simulation that was run with estimated ash fall in different times of year. So we can see that it covers most of North America, including parts of Canada and Mexico as well, are getting at least some ash fall from this sort of eruption. So when looking at long-term impacts, as we discussed earlier, Volcanoes can emit sulfur aerosols that reflect sunlight back into the atmosphere and cool the climate. The potential cooling that can occur due to ash coverage may damage crops, as we saw in the Tambora eruption of 1815, and this could potentially cause famines and food shortages. Much of Yellowstone may be rendered uninhabitable by that molten ash, and the current animal and plant populations could be decimated. And then about response protocol to this sort of eruption. Immediately following the event, search and rescue should be mobilized. People may be buried in ash, separated from loved ones, or caught in pyroclastic flows. Wildlife rescue should also be sent to recover any surviving animals. Yellowstone has a vibrant wildlife ecosystem that would be extremely damaged by this sort of disaster, and national parks don't usually interfere with wildlife except in the case of emergency. I also have linked here Yellowstone Emergency Services. They have plans in place, including warning systems and emergency operation plans for disasters, natural or man-made, that occur in the park. And a little bit more long-term, the public in the area that is affected by ash may want to wear N95 masks for respiratory safety. We may see mass migrations from the areas in the radius of highest ash fall, and a government-driven ash cleanup would need to be implemented. I have also linked here the government website that details how ash cleanup and disaster disposal takes place.
Now we'll talk about future planning recommendations. Widespread casualties are preventable, especially in the immediate area, if proper planning is taken to evacuate the folk in the immediate blast radius. It's believed about 90,000 people could die if they weren't evacuated. So they need to have updated plans and evacuation routes that are open. Then you get into the ash field. More people will be affected by the ash field in the area further away from the immediate blast. So those people need to make sure that they know what to do to stay inside, to shut their windows in case of that event. There needs to be education about that. And people a little closer would want to take certain steps to their house, such as like making sure their rain gutters are solid, or even take them down if they thought the eruption was imminent, and to have steep pitched roofs. These plans need to be made known to visitors, park rangers, and pretty much everybody in the immediate area.